Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking thousands of years of incredibly dense Indian cultural history and weaving it into one clear chronological narrative. We're going from ancient empires right up to colonial resistance, and we're going to keep it highly detailed but super easy to digest. Let's jump right in.
So take a close look at this authentic university history exam paper. It covers the exact material we're exploring today. You've got questions on Gupta temples, the Delhi Sultanate, Mughal art, Rajasthan forts. Honestly, scanning these questions, do you think you could pass it right now?
Well, don't worry if you can't, because by the end of this explainer, you absolutely will. We're going to decode this history so clearly that all the connections are just going to naturally click into place for you.
Here is our quick agenda for today. 1. Ancient foundations and epics. 2. The Indo-Islamic synthesis. 3. Colonialism and cultural resistance. And 4. Royal Rajasthan art and forts.
This timeline is going to anchor us as we go. We're time traveling from the earliest classical empires around 321 BCE through that medieval cultural synthesis of 1206 CE straight into the colonial resistance of the 18th century. And along the way, we'll also explore the regional Rajput dominance of the 16th century.
All right, Section 1, Ancient Foundations and Epics.
So this was really a foundational era, mainly because it birthed monumental stone architecture. You see, before the Mauryan Empire, everything was mostly built of wood. But Emperor Ashoka completely changed the game. He popularized stupas, which are these massive hemispherical domes built specifically to preserve sacred Buddhist relics. He used these giant stone structures, usually finished with this brilliant mirror-like Mauryan polish, to project his moral principles across a huge empire.
Now, while that monumental architecture was physically taking over the landscape, the philosophical groundwork of India was being laid down through oral traditions that eventually became the four Vedas. You have the Rig Veda, which is the oldest and full of foundational hymns. Then there's the Sama Veda, which is all about melodies and chants. The Yajur Veda serves as this extremely detailed ritual guidebook. And finally, the Atharvaveda, which is fascinating because it uniquely documents the everyday life of common people, covering things like medicine, magic, and daily social practices.
And right alongside the Vedas, we get the great epics, which actually offer a really interesting thematic contrast if you put them side by side. On one hand, you have Ved Vyasa's Mahabharata. It's the longest epic in the world, and it wrestles with these heavy, complex themes of war, politics, and dharma. Then, on the other hand, you have Valmiki's Ramayana. It's a bit smaller in scale, and it focuses much more intimately on truth, loyalty, and the idealized kingship of Lord Rama.
Moving on to Section 2. The Indo-Islamic synthesis. Fast forward with me to 1206 CE. The political landscape shifts dramatically with the arrival of the Delhi Sultanate, and this sparks a brilliant centuries-long cultural synthesis that eventually hits its absolute peak under the Mughal Empire. Architecture evolved into something just incredibly luxurious. The perfect example is Pietra Dura. This is that intricate marble decoration where they actually inlay semi-precious stones directly into white marble. It became the total hallmark of Mughal design, which you've probably seen famously adorning the Taj Mahal.
And looking at this era perfectly illustrates the evolution of medieval architecture. It's a stark contrast, really. The earlier Delhi Sultanate stuff was built for sheer, imposing strength. We're talking rigid designs, giant arches, and heavy red sandstone, like the Qutb Minar. But then later, Mughal architecture completely shifted gears. They prioritized this breathtaking, symmetrical elegance, trading all that heavy sandstone for bright white marble and these expansive, beautifully geometric gardens.
It wasn't just buildings, though. Painting underwent a massive shift too, and it really reflected the personality of whoever happened to sit on the throne at the time. Under Emperor Akbar, the focus was all on these large historical manuscripts that blended Persian and Indian styles. But then his son Jahangir had this deep obsession with nature, so he pivoted the art entirely toward hyper-realistic portraits of birds and animals. And finally, under Shah Jahan, the canvas shifted yet again, this time toward highly decorative, incredibly luxurious scenes of royal court elegance.
Okay, Section 3, Colonialism and Cultural Resistance.
So as the British East India Company and later the Crown really started exerting control, Indian art and literature actually transformed into powerful weapons of resistance. This is what fueled cultural nationalism. Indian thinkers and artists basically began actively rediscovering their own past. They used ancient history and traditional spiritual symbols to awaken the masses. It was this brilliant way to assert a rich, unified identity and fight back against colonial exploitation without firing a single shot, just mobilizing people through literature and historical pride.
And in the art world, you get this fascinating battle of styles. The British were heavily patronizing what's called the company school. This used European techniques like perspective and watercolors, basically to document Indian daily life, almost acting like early photography. But nationalist artists, led by figures like Abanendranath Tagore, completely rejected this European influence. They sparked an artistic rebellion, reviving traditional Indian art that heavily favored spiritual expression, rich cultural symbolism, and natural colors over cold realism.
Finally, Section 4, Royal Rajasthan Art and Forts. Let's step away from the national stage for a minute and zoom in on the regional powerhouse of Royal Rajasthan. They were developing a distinctly emotional identity. Remember how the Mughals painted realistic animals and the British pushed watercolors? Well, Rajasthani artists went the opposite route. They favored these unbelievably bright, vibrant reds, yellows, and golds. Their themes focused heavily on Krishna Bhakti, so deep religious devotion, and Ragamala paintings, which is this amazing concept where they brilliantly translated musical melodies and human emotions into visual art. And this exact regional style gave us one of the most recognizable works in all of Indian history, the Bani Thani painting from the Kishangar school. Just look at the incredibly sharp, elegant features, the long eyes, the pointed nose, that graceful posture. It perfectly captures the idealized beauty of Radha. It is such an absolute masterpiece that it's widely earned the nickname the Mona Lisa of India. But, Rajasthan wasn't just about delicate paintings. It was a land fiercely defended by some incredible military engineering. Take Chittor Fort, for example. This massive hilltop capital of the Mewar Kingdom was way more than just a building. It stands today as the ultimate symbol of Rajput valor. But tragically, it's also known for the incredibly heavy historical tradition of Johar, where Rajput women made the ultimate honorable sacrifice to protect their dignity during unavoidable military defeats.
Similarly, you have Ranthambore Fort. Now, while Chittor was the capital, Ranthambore was all about utilizing its environment for defense. It acted as this strategic stronghold, totally hidden within dense forests and cliffs. It's super famous for mounting a legendary resistance against the expanding Delhi Sultanate, specifically taking on rulers like Alauddin Khilji. So you have to remember, these weren't just simple castles. They were entire fortified cities, holding palaces, temples, and giant water reservoirs.
So, we've traveled from the polished stone stupas of ancient empires through the marble elegance of the medieval synthesis into the artistic rebellion of the colonial era and finally to the fierce forts of Rajasthan. Now that you can confidently ace that university exam we looked at earlier, I want to leave you with this one thought. When you consider the incredibly diverse composite culture of modern India today, which of these four remarkable eras do you think truly had the most profound impact in shaping it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.